29th of October is the story we look at now, and the vote is said to be taking place amidst significant political uncertainties and a constrained democratic space. The country's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, went on trial for treason this week, and his party CHADEMA has been barred from contesting the elections in this East African country. And now to discuss further, we are joined by Deus Valentine Rweyemamu, the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Strategic Litigation, an organization he co-founded to address issues of the rule of law, accountability and constitutional culture as we get a wrap of the build-up to these elections.
And a little bit later on, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Nshala, who is the Attorney General for the opposition party CHADEMA. And as you've just heard from Asanda there, Tundu Lissu really has been facing the brunt of political forces in the country and is facing trial. So we'll be unpacking that with the party's Attorney General.
Dios, let's start with you. A very good morning and thanks for joining us on Rise and Shine.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me, Asanda.
Let's paint a picture then of Tanzanians heading to the elections at the end of the month, 29th of October. What do these elections mean for the people of Tanzania, given a lot of the clampdown on those who are critical of the government?
Yeah, I think these elections are essentially a lost opportunity. This is the seventh general election since the reintroduction of multi-party politics in 1992. At that point, a presidential commission led by the then Chief Justice Francis Nyalali had stipulated about 114 recommendations, and just about 50% of those were eventually implemented. Some of the most important recommendations, which had to do with amending Tanzania's constitution to provide for a level playing field for multi-party politics, have never been implemented 33 years later. Tanzanians' patience with that non-implementation has been waning over the years, and this is what led to the major opposition party, CHADEMA, staying out of these elections, having tried very hard through dialogue and engagement with the authorities to push for these long overdue reforms. So the inability to enact these reforms has created conditions that cannot guarantee free and fair elections in Tanzania. The Tanzanian parliament passed a couple of new election laws, three of them in February 2024. We had 20 months before these elections for enacting some critical reforms, including the manner through which the Electoral Commission is appointed. The new law provides for a much more thorough process, a thorough process that would have allowed for some competitive hiring of the members of the commission. But unfortunately, the same law, Act number 2 of 2024, provides explicitly that the existing commission, which was single-handedly picked by the chair of the ruling party, shall not be replaced until such time their tenure ends, which should be at the end of 2026. So I think in the minds of Tanzanians, there are questions around electoral justice, given how the framework is tilted towards favoring the establishment, but also in the minds of Tanzanians, there are big questions around personal liberty and safety. In June this year, UN special mandates on various rights released a statement, or rather a communication to the Tanzanian government in the lead up to the Human Rights Council sessions, the 59 sessions, where they pointed out concern around the enforced disappearances of over 200 people since the last election. And there was expectation at that stage that an investigation, an inquiry into this phenomenon would have taken place. But instead, what we have seen is a growing intolerance for dissent, and even more people than were reported in June have been abducted, the most high profile being this week's abduction of the former spokesperson, the former ruling party's spokesperson, Humphrey Pole Pole, who was violently abducted from his home in Dar es Salaam. for simply calling out the current faction of the ruling party that is in power. So the question is, how safe are Tanzanians in light of the fact that the police force seems to have been overrun by a violent gang that operates outside the premise of the of formal security apparatus, but seems to have more power than the established security apparatus. And finally, I think the big questions that were being raised by this newfound critic, who is the former spokesperson of the ruling party, centered around the mismanagement of public resources, the acquisition of major public resources, including the concession of the port of Dar es Salaam, but also concessions around mining, which, according to him, do not meet the legal requirements provided under Tanzanian law. So, whilst many of us expected that the elections, as ordinarily, would have provided an opportunity for us to debate big questions around how we manage our resources, big questions around how whatever party would come in power would guarantee personal liberty, and big questions around how these parties would have provided, finally, after 33 years of waiting, a pathway to significant democratic reforms. The debate has shifted into concern around mostly personal liberty and the space for dissent in Tanzania.
On that question of personal liberty and security, does it further exacerbate then the image that the police in Tanzania have and security forces who have been seen to be heavy handed against those who are dissenting voices against the government? This particular case that we cite of the former ambassador to Cuba, Humphrey Polepole, who's now gone missing or was abducted violently from his home. How does this particular case make the police look now?
Well, it points to two main observations. One is, of course, an incredible level of impunity, because what we're hearing so far, and according to Humphrey himself, is that there is a vigilante force operating within the structure of the official police. The police, in their most recent statement about a month ago, did not take much responsibility for the security crisis that we are observing at the moment, other than basically claiming that not everybody who disappears is enforcedly disappeared. Rather, there could be many factors, including people who fall into debt. Sometimes it is domestic issues, jealousy, and the like. So the police has really failed to account for the current situation. But the running mate, the ruling party's running mate, Ambassador Emmanuel Nchimbi, spoke in November 2024 last year, where he actually said that he believes that there is a gang. He never really gave further details of who constitutes this gang, and suggested that this gang was making effort to overrun the official security apparatus. So I think that the picture is overall very gloomy, but there hasn't been enough evidence of exactly who is behind these operations, much more speculation of who could be behind them.
These developments ahead of Tanzania's elections, where do they place the current president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, and her image?
Well, it's very concerning. I think President Samia has struggled with asserting her legitimacy. She came in as the first unelected president following the death of her predecessor, John Magufuli, in March 2021. The initial few months were filled with hope. I think Tanzanians had gone through a quite repressive period, and there was desperation for a positive and hopeful message, which I believe she lived up to. She engaged in rhetoric that suggested she was committed to democratic reforms. She inaugurated her own philosophy, the 4R philosophy, focused on resilience, rebuilding, reconciliation, and reforms. And there was, initial activity engaging with the opposition, the formulation of a national task force to review the conditions for Tanzania's democracy. They submitted a report in October 2022. So the first 2 years were filled with hope. But I think what we have also seen, parallel to that, is a state of vulnerability and insecurity on the part of President Samia that we struggle to fully comprehend. We understand that there was resistance within the ruling party, within the establishment, to her ascension to the presidency, but I don't think she has done an incredibly good job at quelling those concerns through this election. What we have seen instead is her administration working very hard to ensure there isn't an election to begin with, and as you rightly pointed out, more of a coronation with every significant contender ruled out of these elections. The remaining 17 candidates have never held public office before, so there's not a reason to believe that they are viable challengers. And at the end of this process, given the lack of competition, given the lack of reforms leading up to these elections, despite our initial promises, given the heightened security risks, especially for those dissenting voices, and given the noise we're hearing around mismanagement of public resources, my take is that at the end of this election, the concerns around her credibility and legitimacy will have grown even further. I don't think these elections will help to give her a fresh mandate. Instead, immediately after the elections, we are likely to see a growing resentment within Tanzania's political class and certainly among Tanzanians' youth that will further erode the goodwill that she was able to amass during the first few months of her administration.
Thank you, DS. We're going to leave it there for now in terms of this first part of the conversation. Of course, we continue with our coverage of the build-up to Tanzania's elections, speaking to the opposition. DS, thanks again for your time.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Deus Valentine Rweyemamu is from the Center for Strategic Litigation. He is a democratic and governance expert. I wonder, when it comes to observations of these elections, how that will play out in terms of how free are they able to make movements in the country? Because we saw earlier when there was solidarity from neighboring countries, from Uganda, from Kenya, for the opposition parties appearing in court, and those wanting to show their support, who were kicked out of the country, and they were told that they're interfering in matters that are of no concern to them and shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, what we know on the continent is that observer missions actually, they're nice to have, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because nothing of consequence ever happens as a result of any observer mission I have ever had experience with. So whether they get access or not, what is going to be, sadly. So we've just heard from Deus Valentine Rweyemamu, who's talking about the broad pressures and pattern of democratic backsliding in Tanzania. We now turn to CHADEMA, Chama Cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo, which is Swahili for Party for Democracy and Progress. And this is the main opposition party that's been disqualified from contesting this month's elections. And with us is Dr. Rugemeleza Nshala, who's CHADEMA's Attorney General, to discuss how this impacts the rules, the politics, and also Tanzania's democratic trajectory. Dr. Nshala, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to Channel Africa.
Thank you very much.
Your thoughts on the Commission's justification that CHADEMA failed to sign the mandatory electoral code for conduct, therefore justifying your exclusion?
Not at all, because the ethical code that was promulgated by the so-called Independent National Electoral Commission was not in total adherence to the principles of fair and free elections, to have an independent commission that CHADEMA has been advocating. And the time when that announcement was made on the 12th of April 2025, the rules, the court itself said it will come into force a day after the nomination of the candidates, and that was not even the parliament had not been dissolved. That was in April. The parliament was dissolved on the 3rd of August 2025, but that was an indication, or it was a proof of how that commission is highly compromised and was only there to save the intentions of CCM, to ensure that CCM remains in power no matter what, and that Samia, who had presided over our nomination, unprecedented even in the Tanzanian terms, in January 2025, in a meeting that was not scheduled to be a convention for the nomination of candidates, and but still that commission accepted him accepted her to be the CCM candidate. So basically, the commission was just doing the CCM bidding or Samia's bidding. And for that matter, CHADEMA said, no way. We want fundamental reforms to ensure that we have free and fair elections, and we cannot partake in that in a sham process to try to give a veneer of legitimacy to a highly compromised system, which is basically which CHADEMA will not be part of. We tried to reason with the CCM, to try to reason with Samia, but ultimately she found that she could not win against CHADEMA. So the only way was to find a shortcut and to stay in power. That's what happened.
Do you have any recourse? I mean, what's the plan now, given what's playing out? Can the courts come to your assistance, or do you have faith in the courts?
No, in terms of the elections, no one will say we have faith. The courts, the way they are structured now, and the things, the way they conduct themselves in those election cases that were filed in 2018, 2019, then the ensuing ones which have been filed recently by other political parties or other activists, show that you cannot achieve much through the court process. So we thought that the only people that to go to the Tanzanian people to make an appeal to them that we cannot be part of this system, because in all those processes, in all the other past elections that we have taken part into, they resulted into the killings of our supporters. And so we don't want to be part of a process where our supporters, the youth, will go out there, but will be abducted, will be enforced, disappeared. And for that matter, we said we could not be part of it. So our recourse is to the Tanzanian people that they want them to take action against the government, against the system, and basically organize themselves in a manner that is within the democratic space of agitating and campaigning for fundamental reforms. So our main bedrock and supporters and the ultimate judges are the Tanzanian people. But the way things are, Tanzania is also almost, my friends, almost we are in a terrible state that I think even the colonialists did better than what CCM and Samia are doing.
So CHADEMA is not going to be on the ballot paper. Is that the position you're taking? And when you say called citizens to action, what are we talking about here? Are we talking demonstrations? Are we talking boycotts? What are we looking at?
It's all of that. The demonstration is part of that, to agitate, to voice their concerns. Some people might boycott, some people might demonstrate. I think we've seen some youths who are organizing themselves to demonstrate on the 29th of October. That's one of those things that might happen. Other people might stay back home. That's fine. But basically, CCM now, I don't know if you have seen that, all the political rallies that Samia has organized and the CCM, people are being bussed in from 5 regions of the country. Assume people being ferried, let's say, from Pretoria, from Port Elizabeth, and being brought to Johannesburg to attend the ANC political rally or EFF political rally. That's the state in Tanzania, because Samia is not that popular. CCM is not that popular. So they are forcing even civil servants to not attend, to not go to work, but rather go and attend Samia's political rallies. Students, primary public school students of secondary school are being told to wear civilian clothes, and they're taken to attend Samia political rallies because she's so unpopular that people don't like her, don't love her, but she's using the state machinery. And this is an election, corruption-ridden election. Can you imagine? You have a CCM candidate with a name being emblazoned on the motorcycles, on bicycles, in which is contrary to the Tanzanian law. You're not supposed to give things to incentivize people to vote for you. That's corruption. But the so-called Independent National Electoral Commission and our anti-corruption body are not looking at it. They're paying a blind eye to all that is happening. And how can you be part of it? Tanzania know it. You can see you have a subdued election campaign, but Samia is soldiering on, using all the state resources to bankroll a campaign. And this is contrary to our constitution, and we are going to hold that to account.
What can the international community do, the observers that might come for this election? Is there any hope from the East African community in terms of looking at Tanzania and maybe even the AU?
Yeah, they can come, but I'm not sure if they are coming, because I think SADC is not coming, or if they are there, but they've seen that everything is not done in accordance with the international standards. And so I think EU is not there. The AU might be there, or SADC, but East African might be, but it's not. Whenever they've been coming here, they've been writing their reports, things that should be done to improve our elections campaign, and even the conduct. And the CCM has refused to accede to each and every of those recommendations, because for them it said we have to use the state apparatus to stay in power. And this was said by the former CCM Secretary General during Magufuli's time. We are going to use the state apparatus to remain in power. What can we do, my friend? So that's where we are. So the international community has to hold Tanzania to account. We're happy that there have been some the human rights bodies of the UN, so UN have held Tanzania to account. Then the other bodies, even the AU, for the first time, they think the Commission for the African Human Rights Commission also held Tanzania to account. So Tanzania is basically under Samia, as he backslided into anarchy, and Samia is all out there. You have seen the enforced disappearance. Even the other day, a former ambassador of Tanzania to Malawi and Cuba has been disappeared, and now the government, the police is feigning ignorance of all that took place.
Okay.
But
Dr. Nshala, we've run out of time, but very briefly, I don't know if you could just give us an update on Mr. Lissu. I believe he's back in court today.
Yeah, he's in court. He's now conducting his own defense. And so he's now doing his cross-examination of the first state witness. So the case is continuing today. So we hope that all that is happening, eventually Lissu will prevail, no matter what it's a setup kind of a case. But ultimately, I know he will be able to prevail. Thank you.
Dr. Nshala, thank you very much indeed for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Dr. Rugemeleza Nshala, who's CHADEMA's Attorney General, who is joining us to talk about the challenges that opposition parties and opposition figures are facing in the country at this time. Now, South Africa's national under-20 men's football team, Amidst, are through to the knockout round